Well, didn't start off on the best of terms, but after the first game, I'd say most Flames fans are happy how things have started. So I'll take this breakaway pass here and put on net as it's time for... Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Brett Hornby here. Well, this is my Calgary Flames in 6. My recap segments on how the Calgary Flames have done in various segments here. So I made the first video here where I recovered everything about what happened in the preseason, and definitely was a much longer preseason than usual, especially when they had a couple games in China there. But now this is the first 6 games of the 2018-19 regular season, games 1 through 6 on the schedule. Hence why I call it my Calgary Flames in 6 here. So if you enjoy this, plus my other recap videos with the Calgary Hitmen, Calgary Stampeders, and I'll be doing Calgary Roughnecks when lacrosse season starts in December. So make sure you hit like and subscribe to my channel. I also post other sports takes and scenery videos, as well as a few personal vlogs here, where actually yesterday I was talking about, when sports teams should raise a banner on light of what the Nashville Predators did there last week. Anyway, let's recap the Calgary Flames and what they did, how they did in their first 6 games in the 2018-19 season here. So I'll grab my notes here. So as I said in the opening there, things didn't exactly start off well. On Wednesday, October 3rd, with an 8 p.m. puck drop at the Rogers Arena, the Calgary Flames took on the Vancouver Canucks, and as many pundits, including myself, figured that it's time. Vancouver's been going on their rebuild, first year at the Sedins, after they retired, but Vancouver actually came out with a bang there and tripped Calgary up with the 5-2 loss. The Calgary Flames lost the first game 5-2, but this is actually was the 9th season in a row that the Calgary Flames lost an opening night. So it's hard to say if it's it's definitely been another trend that's in the wrong direction here. But despite Calgary out shooting Vancouver that night, I think it was 35-23, they just looked out of it, and Vancouver definitely was the better team, and out to prove the pundits wrong that they're not as bad as what everyone says, including Elias Pettersson, who's opened up. He scored the first goal in the game, and he had the goal and assist, and he's definitely favored to be in the Calder conversation here. But unfortunately, the first game didn't start off well with a 9th straight opening day loss with a 5-2 loss to the Vancouver Canucks. But Calgary was able to get some sweet revenge in the second game on Saturday, October 6th, first hockey night in Canada of the regular season. They took on the Vancouver Canucks once again, this time at the Scotiabank Saddledome in front of the Sea of Red, and this one really turned out to be a real wild one, as the Calgary Flames won this one 7-4. So far this has been a trend league-wide that actually has been a lot more scoring here, but there definitely was a lot of moments up and down in this game, but the Calgary Flames eventually pulled out with a 7-4 win. I essentially say it was a 5-4 game because the last 2 goals were an empty netter, but a lot of things to hide here. Mr. Pettersson again for the Vancouver Canucks. He actually had another monster game with 2 goals, 1 assist, and but the Flames definitely had some big numbers themselves. Elias Lindholm, this was his first game at home in front of the Sea of Red. He definitely made an impression by scoring the first goal and the eventual game winner. He had 2 goals and an assist. And you don't forget about Johnny Hockey. He had a goal, 2 assists. But the big point getter that night was actually Matt Tkachuk, who potted 4 assists. That was his best performance for points in the game. I guess the one thing I forgot to mention that happened in the Calgary-Vancouver home series is that remember Ensign actually he had a fight with Travis Hamnick. This is going back to the first game, so he suffered a facial fracture, so he's been out after the first game of the season. And then there actually wasn't really any vendetta because Calgary carried on the opening day roster carried Dalton Prout, and he definitely drew in the lineup in second game to add some physical presence on the blue line, but nothing came out of that. I mean, I think it was just the loosey-goosey nature of the game where Calgary scored a couple goals, Vancouver kept coming back, taking a quick lead. Howe's actually out in Valemont when that game happened, and more people were actually returning for Vancouver at the bar there, but it was definitely nice to get some sweet revenge. Show some love for the Flames out in the Robson Valley area. So after the back-to-back against Vancouver, the Flames have an early tough road trip here where they play some Central Division teams, and those Central Division points are going to be huge, especially to gain them now, especially if you're looking at playoff races and wild card, because the Central Division still looks tougher than the Pacific, and there's the potential that you have to be in the top three to make the playoffs in the Pacific. But the third game happened on Tuesday, October the 9th, 6 p.m. start at the Bridgestone Arena, and Mike Smith, he stole this one for the Flames with a 43 save shutout. I believe this actually ties his own record where he set most saves in a shutout, but the Flames, they were outshot by a 2-1 ratio this whole game, but came out with the win thanks to Mike Smith with a 3-0 shutout win. The other thing you can highlight for this game is that Sean Monahan applied 2 goals, so I'm going to say it looked fine in preseason. It's definitely looking fine now with all the surgeries he had. I mean, it's still unheard of. He needed 4 surgeries to repair himself in the off season, but Sean Monahan's looking fine right now, and it won't be out of the realm to say that scoring 40 goals is possible if he maintains the pace. And then after playing in Nashville on Tuesday night, they continued their 3-game road trip here on Thursday, October 11th at 6 p.m. at the Enterprise Center to take on the St. Louis Blues. And this game definitely was a tougher game for the Calgary Flames. Maybe a little pushback, back to reality. Actually, Bill Peters, the coach, did mention that his plan was how to manage Mike Smith, so hopefully we don't have as much workload on him throughout the season so that he doesn't make the playoffs. He's not burnt out like what happens in the past with some goalies, that he was going to start David Riddick that night, but he decided to put Smith back in to reward him with the shutout that he stole in Nashville. But I'm not too sure if it would have been any different, but St. Louis definitely looked like the better team that night as they beat the Calgary Flames 5-3, but Flames was able to rally in the third period as they were down 5-1 at one point, but the comeback fell short. David Perron definitely stole the show that night with a 3-goal hat trick. It was St. Louis's first win of the season. This is one of those teams that we expect to see him rebound after falling down the stretch and just missed the playoffs, where it came down to the last game between St. Louis and Colorado, and Colorado won that game. But St. Louis, like the Flames, made many changes in the offseason, and we just attribute that they just fell off the rails at the wrong time. Other tidbits to note in this game, despite losing, is that James Neal scored his first goal as a Calgary Flame, and Dylan Dubé collected his first NHL point as an assist. And even though Dylan Dubé, still probably on the high of I'm in the NHL after playing with the Kelowna Rockets last year, he definitely said the right things, that I wish my first point came with a win. So and then going back to the Smith-Rittich thing, actually David Rittich came in and played the third period in that game. So Smith got chased out after being down 5-1. But this road trip actually ended off on a high note for game number 5, as that happened on Saturday, October the 13th, 8 p.m. puck drop. Hockey night in Canada. The Flames went to Colorado to play in the Pepsi Center, and they actually won that game 3-2 in overtime. A couple things to note that game is David Riddick actually started in net for that game, as he played all right in relief duty in the third period in St. Louis, but the plan was that David Riddick was going to start a game on this road trip, and Bill Peters stuck to his word. But actually, the Colorado Avalanche had a quick 2-0 lead, scored 2 goals in the first couple minutes, and had a timeout and rallied the boys, and Flames were able to chip away here, and Johnny Gaudreau, scored on the breakaway in overtime, 3-on-3. He's definitely not someone you want to have on a breakaway, but the Calgary Flames were able to come back and win it 3-2 in overtime. And David Riddick picked up his first win of the season on a 19-save performance. Actually, on a side note, David Riddick won his first ever game in the NHL in his first start in Colorado last year, so maybe he can play, something in Colorado. As Colorado actually, they've been an up and down team the last couple of years, but they've been tough to beat at home. So, things were looking good with 2 out of 3 wins against Central Division teams on the road trip. So to wrap up my first 6-game segment here, the Flames went home on Wednesday, October the 17th, 7 p.m. puck drop. They took on the Boston Bruins back home at the Saddledome, the Sea of Red. So far, the first 2 home games of the season, the Flames actually were wearing their retro reds, and they were definitely familiar with the Boston Bruins with the China games. And even though the Atlantic Division is looking strong with Tampa Bay and Toronto, but Boston's still no slouch either. But the Calgary Flames were able to outplay the Boston Bruins and win that one 5-2 here. A lot of things to note on this game is that Michael Frolik responded with a 2-goal performance after he was a healthy scratch for the first time since his rookie season. And also, this was the first time that the 3M line was put together, this time under Bill Peters, with Michael Backlund, Matthew Tkachuk, and Michael Frolik, the second line, who's been a fairly effective shutdown line. And I think after last night, I think this you'll see the 3M line together, because Austin Czarnik took Michael Frolik's spot because he had chemistry with Michael Backlund and Matthew Tkachuk during preseason, especially that hat-trick game. But Austin Czarnik, he's definitely a versatile winger that he can play second, third, and fourth line, which that was definitely the beauty why they signed him. But other things to know is that Yusuf Alamaki, the other rookie that made it out from camp, he also scored his first goal in the NHL. And going back to the 3M line, Michael Backlund had 2 assists. And Johnny Gaudreau did actually score a goal, number 100 of his NHL career. Although, unfortunately, he also took a hit in the third period. But I got a notification earlier today that Johnny Gaudreau is not feeling any effects of the hit. I mean, he played after he took a hit there, and then had to go through the concussion protocol test. So I haven't heard anything yet about if he's playing or not. But let's hope he doesn't miss any time, and was out as a precaution, because Johnny Gaudreau's been off to a hot start here, especially when I get to the stats here. So as I say, the first 6 games of the regular season, the Calgary Flames are a solid 4-2, including 2-0 at home and for the Sea of Red. And that was definitely another thing that the Calgary Flames were looking at bettering this year, was their home record, because they were 3 games under 500 on dome ice last year, which was another factor on things falling off the rails and not making the playoffs here. So player transactions that happened in the 6-game segment here is that, I mentioned that Travis Hamonic had a facial fracture in the fight in the first game, so he's out for a couple weeks. Haven't heard any progress yet on when he's expected to be back here, but let's hope he can come back, by the end of October here. And then Curtis Lazar, who originally was on the opening day roster, he actually requested to get sent down to Stockton, so he actually eventually got sent down to Stockton, and so far he's looking good, putting up points down Stockton, so hopefully maybe he can find some confidence again, and maybe he'll come back up with the Flames and be closer to what the Ottawa Senators visioned him being back when 2013 they drafted him. So the couple guys that that got called up from the Stockton Heat, one was Anthony Peloso, but he's another fill-in forward that he actually played a couple games during this 6-game stretch because Mark Jankowski was scratched for a couple games just to send a message. But I mean, Anthony Peluso is just another fill-in defenseman, and another defenseman a lot of fans, including myself, was high on is Rasmus Andersson to fill in for Travis Hamonic's spot, and he's definitely been a nice addition. I mean, you can only have so many players on the roster, but I'm pretty sure that when Travis Hamonic comes back, Rasmus Andersson might be going down to back to Stockton. I mean, it'd make more sense because he'll actually play, because Dalton Prout, what you get out of him. He's just a physical defenseman, so it don't matter if he's here as an extra defenseman or playing in Stockton. But we'll see what happens. But it's not a bad thing to have depth on your roster. I mean, depth overall, or as I say with the Calgary Stampeders, it's also nice to have depth on wide receiver because that's been tested a lot this year. So now let's look ahead to the next 6 games that the Calgary Flames will play. Game 7 will be Friday, October the 19th, 7 p.m. puck drop. They'll take on the Nashville Predators again, so we'll see how the Nashville Predators will look this time at home. And then they go on the road for a couple games. As on Game 8 will be Sunday, October the 21st, 5 p.m. puck drop. This is definitely an arena as a fan I would love to go to, is Madison Square Garden, when they take on the New York Rangers. And then Game 9, which will happen on Tuesday, October the 23rd, 5:30 p.m. puck drop. They'll go to the Bell Center in Montreal to take on the Montreal Canadiens. So we'll see how if they can beat Carey Price, and Montreal is definitely looking good, rejuvenated so far at the start of the season. And then they come back home for a couple games here. Definitely a big test here. 10th game, which is on Thursday, October 25th. They take on Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then Game 11, which is Saturday, October 27th. They'll have some afternoon delight with a 2 p.m. puck drop, taking on the Alexander Ovechkin, the defending Stanley Cup champion Washington Capitals. And then to wrap up, which will be my next 6-game segment, which will be episode 3. Game 12, Monday, October 29th. They go back on the road. 5 p.m. puck drop. They go to the Air Canada Centre to take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So October is definitely going to be a lot busier for the Flames in the second half than it was in the first half. It felt like it was a long time ago that I did a preseason video, and even when I went over the opening roster. So yeah, so now let's go over some numbers here. Early in the 2018-19 season, the Calgary Flames are 4-2 with 8 points, 4 wins, 2 losses, and with 8 points, and they're in their second place in the Pacific Division, behind the Anaheim Ducks, and surprisingly, the Vancouver Canucks right now they're in the Pacific, but it's still early. And the one guy who used to be the play guy for the Calgary Flames on the radio is Peter Maher. He said, don't really take stock in what a team looks like in the second quarter of the season, games 20 to 40. We're only at game 6 here. So when we get to episodes 5, 6, 7, 8 of the series here, this is when we can take a little more stock into, how the Flames look with the competition in the NHL. But on the other hand, playing catch-up is tough in the NHL because teams also look at American Thanksgiving as a guideline, and if they're still in the playoff spot or a couple points out, or if you're like 7 to 10 points out of a playoff spot at American Thanksgiving, you might as well start thinking about next season already, because it's so competitive, especially with the 3-point games. So anyway, let's get back to some leaders here. Points, both Johnny Gaudreau and Matt Tkachuk have 9 points in 6 games. Sean Monahan has 7 points, and Elias Lindholm has 6 points. So, that trade with Dougie Hamilton is paying dividends for the Calgary Flames, offensively and defensively, with Noah Hannafin as well. The goals, both Monahan and Lindholm have 4 goals each. That's just tied for team lead. And then assists, Matt Tkachuk had 7. Well, he had 4 in that one game. And then Johnny Gaudreau has 6 assists. And then just quickly go over the goalies here. David Rittich is 1-0. He has a little better numbers, but he has a smaller gameplay. But, with the 1 win when he's played, he has a 1.54 goals against average and a 941 save percentage, which is pretty good. Mike Smith with the 3 wins, 1 shutout. He has a 323 goals against average, but he allowed a lot of goals there against the Vancouver Canucks and an 889 save percentage. But the Vancouver and the St. Louis game definitely is a big factor in that. I think the Nashville game and the Boston game closely resembles who we expect Mike Smith to be. And then the other numbers I'm going to throw out here is the special teams numbers, because this is definitely going to be under a lot more scrutiny here, especially with the coaching change. The power play, though, is hitting at 17.2%, which is right now 20th in the league, but considering how the power play started and where it was last year, that's actually improving, but it's actually showing signs of getting better. And then the penalty kill is 83.3%, which is ranked 9th in the league, which we're about what the power play was last year for the Calgary Flames anyway. So yeah, that's my first regular season, episode 2 of my Calgary Flames in 6. So if you enjoy everything I cover on my YouTube channel with the game recaps, sports takes, scenery videos, personal vlogs, I have it all saved in my in playlists on my YouTube channel. So if you ever want to call up and binge watch all my content as you want, make sure you hit like, subscribe to follow my channel, and I'll see you after the Calgary Flames play the next 6 games for episode 3, and I'll have a Calgary Hitmen in 6 video happening this upcoming weekend, because they'll be finishing up their 6-game segment. That'll be episode 3 there. So lots of content coming as the sports season is underway, and of course when we get to November, it's big football, Grey Cup season for me. So there will be a lot more of me coming up here in the next couple months. So as I always say, I'll see you in the next video.